I'm Isabelle Harrison, 28 years old, and I'm standing outside my childhood mansion holding a cardboard box containing everything I own. 20 minutes ago, my parents looked me straight in the eye and said the words that shattered my world: "You're no longer our daughter." The rain is starting to fall, mixing with tears I refuse to let them see. This is my birthday, the day that was supposed to celebrate another year of my existence, but instead it's become the day my family decided I no longer exist to them. As I walk away from the only home I've ever known, I make myself a promise that will change everything. Before I dive into this incredible journey of betrayal, determination, and ultimate triumph, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop your city in the comments below, and don't forget to hit that like button if you're ready for a story that'll show you how the worst day of your life can become the foundation of your greatest success. Make sure to subscribe because this tale of turning family betrayal into billion-dollar revenge is just getting started, and trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. The morning had started so differently. I'd driven up the winding driveway of our family estate in Connecticut, the same path I'd traveled thousands of times before, expecting nothing more than the usual birthday dinner with my parents. The Harrison name was carved into a stone pillar at the entrance, a reminder of the real estate empire my great-grandfather had built from nothing in the 1920s. For over a century, our family had been synonymous with luxury properties and commercial developments across the East Coast. I had given everything to this family business. After graduating summa cum laude from Harvard Business School, I'd thrown myself into the company with the kind of dedication that bordered on obsession. 15-hour workdays were normal for me. While my college friends were getting married and starting families, I was negotiating multi-million-dollar deals and expanding our international division. I hadn't taken a real vacation in 3 years. Every weekend, every holiday, every birthday had been spent either at the office or at business dinners, always putting the Harrison legacy first. My bedroom in the mansion still looked exactly the same as when I'd left for college 10 years earlier, a shrine to the perfect daughter I'd tried so hard to be. Academic achievement awards covered one wall, business school graduation photos sat on the dresser, and my first real estate license hung in a frame my mother had personally chosen. I'd sacrificed every personal relationship, every romantic possibility, every dream that didn't align with building this empire, all because I believed it would be mine someday. Walking into my father's study that afternoon, I expected the usual birthday routine. Richard Harrison, my father, sat behind his massive mahogany desk, the same one his father had used to build the company into what it was today. My mother, Margaret, stood by the window overlooking the gardens, her posture rigid in that way that always meant serious business was about to be discussed. My younger brother Timothy was there too, lounging in one of the leather chairs with a smirk that should have warned me something was wrong. "Isabelle," my father began, his voice carrying that formal tone he used during board meetings, "we need to discuss the future of Harrison Properties." I smiled, thinking this was finally the moment they would officially name me as his successor. Instead, his next words felt like a physical blow to my chest. "We've decided to transition leadership of the company to Timothy. Effective immediately, you'll be stepping down from all executive positions." The words hit me like ice water. I stared at him, certain I'd misheard, waiting for the punchline or the explanation that would make this make sense. "I'm sorry, what did you just say?" I managed to whisper, my voice barely audible over the sound of my heart pounding in my ears. Margaret turned from the window, her expression cold and determined. "We've made our decision, Isabelle. Timothy will be taking over as CEO. Women simply aren't suited for the kind of pressure that comes with running a business of this magnitude. You're too emotional, too reactive. Our investors need to see strong, stable leadership." I felt the room spinning around me. But I built the international division from nothing. I brought in over $200 million in revenue last year alone. I've proven myself over and over again. My voice was rising despite my efforts to stay calm and professional. This couldn't be happening. Not today. Not ever. Timothy spoke up for the first time, his voice dripping with fake sympathy. "It's nothing personal, sis. It's just business. Dad and I have been discussing this for months. The board of directors agrees that the company needs a different kind of leadership moving forward. Someone who can make the tough decisions without getting weighed down by feelings. Months? I repeated, the betrayal cutting deeper with each revelation. You've been planning this behind my back for months? I looked at my father, the man who had taught me to read financial statements when I was 12 years old, who had brought me to construction sites and shown me how to evaluate properties. Dad, you know what I've accomplished. You know how hard I've worked. Richard's expression remained unmoved. Your hard work is appreciated, Isabelle, but this decision is final. We need someone who can command respect in boardrooms, someone who can negotiate with the kind of authority that our business partners expect. I'm sorry, but that's simply not you. The humiliation was overwhelming, but worse than their words was the realization that they had already made all the arrangements. Timothy pulled out a folder and slid it across the desk toward me. These are the termination papers. You'll receive a generous severance package, of course, but we need your resignation letter and your company credit cards by the end of the day. I stared down at the papers, my vision blurring as the magnitude of what was happening finally sank in. They weren't just removing me from the company. They were erasing me from the family legacy entirely. Everything I had worked for, everything I had sacrificed, was being handed to my brother who had barely managed to graduate from a second-tier business school and had spent most of his 20s partying and making connections at country clubs. This is my birthday, I said quietly, my voice breaking despite my efforts to maintain composure. Today is my birthday, and you're destroying my life. Margaret's response was the final nail in the coffin. Perhaps this will teach you that the world doesn't revolve around you, Isabelle. Timothy has proven he has the vision and the temperament to take this company to the next level. It's time for you to step aside and let him do what needs to be done. The meeting was over. Just like that. 28 years of being the perfect daughter, 10 years of dedicated service to the family business, and it all ended with a stack of papers and a demand that I clear out my office immediately. As I stood up to leave, my legs shaking with shock and anger, I realized that this birthday would indeed be unforgettable, but not for any reason I could have imagined. The true scope of their betrayal began to unfold as soon as I left my father's study. Timothy followed me out, and the moment we were alone in the hallway, his fake sympathy evaporated completely. Finally, he said with a grin that made my stomach turn. I was getting tired of pretending to support your little career fantasy. What are you talking about? I demanded, though a terrible suspicion was already forming in my mind. Oh, Isabelle, you really had no idea, did you? Timothy laughed, a sound devoid of any brotherly affection. I've been working on this for 3 years. Every mistake you made, every client complaint, every project delay, I made sure Mom and Dad heard about it. I may have exaggerated some of the details, but they needed to see the truth about your incompetence. The hallway felt like it was closing in around me. You sabotaged me. Your own sister. I protected the family business from someone who would have run it into the ground within 5 years, he replied coldly. Did you really think they would choose you over me? You were always too soft, too trusting. Business isn't about feelings, Isabelle. It's about winning. Before I could respond, Timothy pulled out his phone and showed me a folder full of documents I'd never seen before. Performance reviews highlighting your emotional instability. Client feedback forms expressing concerns about your leadership style. Financial projections showing the losses your international division would have caused if left unchecked. Each document was a masterpiece of manipulation, taking real situations and twisting them into evidence of my unfitness for leadership. These are fabricated, I said, though I could see how convincing they looked. You made all of this up. Prove it, Timothy challenged. Oh wait, you can't, because as of today, you no longer have access to company records. Good luck with your new life, sister. I hope you've been saving your money, because this gravy train just came to an end. The cruelty continued as I made my way to my office to collect my personal belongings. Sarah, my assistant for the past 4 years, avoided eye contact as I approached her desk. Sarah had been more than just an employee, I'd trusted her with everything. I'd helped her through her divorce, given her time off when her mother was sick, and even helped her daughter get an internship at one of our partner companies. "Sarah," I said softly, "I need to get into my office to pack up my things." She finally looked up, and I saw guilt written all over her face. "I'm sorry, Isabelle, but I can't let you access anything without Timothy's permission. He said you might try to take confidential documents." The betrayal hit me like a physical punch. "Sarah, it's me. You know I would never do anything to harm the company." "I know," she whispered, "but I have to follow orders. Timothy promised me a promotion to executive assistant if I cooperated with the transition. I have a daughter to support, you know that." It was then that I realized how deep Timothy's planning had gone. He hadn't just undermined me with our parents. He'd been building a network of allies throughout the company, promising promotions and benefits to anyone who would help him push me out. Sarah handed me a small cardboard box containing the few personal items someone else had already removed from my office: a photo of my college graduation, a coffee mug from my Harvard Business School reunion, and a small plant I'd been growing for 2 years. "Your access cards have been deactivated," Sarah continued, reading from what was obviously a prepared script. "Your company phone and laptop need to be returned immediately, and your parking pass is no longer valid." I stood there holding that pathetic cardboard box, realizing that 10 years of my life had just been reduced to 3 insignificant objects. Around me, other employees I'd worked with for years were suddenly very busy with their computers, unable or unwilling to meet my eyes. The same people who had laughed at my jokes during staff meetings, who had celebrated our wins together, who had come to me for advice and mentorship, now treated me like I was invisible. The financial devastation was swift and comprehensive. Within hours of leaving the office, I discovered that my credit cards were being declined. My checking account, which I thought contained my savings, had been frozen. As I sat in my car in the company parking lot, frantically calling my bank, I learned the horrible truth: everything had been tied to the family business. My apartment lease was in the company name. My car insurance was through the corporate account. Even my health insurance was about to be cancelled. "I need to speak to someone about my personal accounts," I told the bank representative, my hands shaking as I held my phone. "Ma'am, according to our records, you were removed as an authorized user on all accounts associated with Harrison Properties earlier today. Without corporate authorization, I can't provide access to any of those funds." "But that's my money," I protested. "I earned that salary." "I understand your frustration, but the accounts were structured as corporate benefits rather than personal accounts. You'll need to work directly with your former employer to resolve this matter." I called Timothy immediately, hoping against hope that this was some kind of mistake. When he answered, I could hear celebration sounds in the background. "What's wrong, Isabelle? Already having trouble adjusting to the real world?" "You froze my bank accounts," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "That's theft." "Actually, it's good business practice," Timothy replied cheerfully. "We can't have former employees walking around with access to corporate funds. Don't worry, though. Your final paycheck will be mailed to you eventually. Well, whatever's left after we deduct the company credit card charges and the corporate apartment fees and the car allowance overpayments. I'm sure there will be something." The line went dead, and I sat alone in my car, holding a cardboard box and exactly $287 in cash that I'd found in my purse. Everything else I'd worked for, saved for, and built over the past 10 years was gone. Not just gone, but taken, deliberately and methodically, by the family I'd devoted my entire adult life to serving. But the betrayals weren't finished yet. That evening, as I tried to figure out where I was going to sleep, I called my college friend Rebecca, someone I'd known since freshman year at Harvard. We hadn't spoken much recently because of my work schedule, but I thought she would at least listen to what had happened. "Isabelle." Rebecca answered warmly. "What a surprise to hear from you. How are things at the family empire?" "Actually, that's why I'm calling," I began, but before I could explain, Rebecca's tone completely changed. "Oh," she said coldly, I heard about what happened today. Timothy called me a few hours ago to let me know about your situation. He said you'd probably be reaching out to old friends, trying to get sympathy for your performance issues. My performance issues? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Rebecca, you know me better than that. I thought I did, she replied. But Timothy explained how you'd been embezzling money and how the family tried to cover it up to avoid scandal. He said you'd probably deny everything and try to make it look like you were the victim. I'm sorry, Isabelle, but I can't get involved in this kind of drama. She hung up before I could defend myself, leaving me staring at my phone in complete shock. Timothy's campaign to destroy me hadn't stopped with removing me from the company. He was systematically destroying my reputation, making sure that even my oldest friends would turn against me. As the sun set on what should have been my birthday celebration, I realized that I was truly alone, with nowhere to go and no one to turn to. The family that had raised me had not just abandoned me, they had declared war on my very existence. The first week of homelessness was a crash course in humiliation I never could have imagined. My car became my bedroom, a blue Honda that I'd bought used 3 years earlier, one of the few possessions that was actually in my name. I parked in different locations each night, trying to avoid attracting attention from police or security guards. The gym membership I'd maintained for stress relief became my shower facility, though I had to be careful not to linger too long or use it too often. Job hunting proved to be an exercise in futility that grew more demoralizing with each passing day. Every potential employer who showed initial interest would suddenly become unavailable after checking my references. I began to understand the scope of Timothy's sabotage when a recruiter I'd worked with previously finally agreed to meet me for coffee and explain what was happening. I'm sorry, Isabelle, she said quietly, glancing around the coffee shop as if she was afraid to be seen with me. The word going around is that you had some kind of breakdown at Harrison Properties. They're saying you were stealing money and that you made threats when you were caught. Nobody wants to touch that kind of liability. That's completely false, I insisted, but I could see in her eyes that the damage was already done. Maybe it is, she replied, but in this business, perception is reality. Until the scandal dies down, you're essentially unemployable in real estate. I'd suggest you consider a different career path. A different career path. After 10 years of building expertise in luxury real estate development, after earning an MBA from one of the world's top business schools, after sacrificing everything to become an expert in my field, I was being told to start over from scratch. The financial pressure was becoming unbearable. My cash reserves had dwindled to less than $50, and I was surviving on energy bars and coffee from convenience stores. The breaking point came on a Thursday morning in a small coffee shop in downtown Hartford. I'd been sitting there for 3 hours, using their free Wi-Fi to apply for jobs I was overqualified for, positions that probably wouldn't even cover basic living expenses. My laptop battery was dying, my head was pounding from caffeine and stress, and I hadn't eaten a real meal in 2 days. As I stared at yet another rejection email, the room started spinning around me. The next thing I knew, I was lying on the floor with concerned faces looking down at me. A woman with kind eyes and silver-streaked hair was kneeling beside me, checking my pulse and speaking in a calm, authoritative voice. Has someone called for medical help? Can you hear me, honey? Try to stay still until we make sure you're okay. I'm fine, I mumbled, trying to sit up despite the embarrassment burning through me. I just need some air. You just collapsed from exhaustion and probably dehydration, the woman said firmly. You're not fine. My name is Elena Rodriguez, and I'm not leaving until we get some food in you and figure out what's going on. Elena helped me to a table in the back corner of the shop and disappeared for a few minutes, returning with a large sandwich, a bottle of water, and a chocolate chip cookie. Eat, she commanded, and something in her tone reminded me of my grandmother, the only person who had ever truly made me feel unconditionally loved. As I slowly ate the first real food I'd had in days, Elena studied me with the kind of intense focus I recognized from high-level business meetings. Let me guess, she said finally. College educated, probably advanced degree, worked in finance or business development, and something catastrophic happened recently that left you homeless and unemployable. I nearly choked on my sandwich. How could you possibly know that? Because 15 years ago, I was exactly where you are right now, Elena replied. Same look in your eyes, same quality clothes that are starting to show wear, same way of holding yourself like you're trying not to take up too much space. I built my first company from nothing after my own family tried to destroy me. I know what rock bottom looks like. Elena Rodriguez, as I learned over the next 2 hours, was a legend I should have known about. She'd built a software development company called PropTech Innovations from a single computer in her apartment into a $50 million enterprise that had been acquired by Microsoft 3 years earlier. Her specialty was artificial intelligence applications for business optimization, and she'd been featured on the cover of Entrepreneur magazine twice. The story you're not telling me, Elena continued, is about family. Family businesses are the worst kind of betrayal because they combine personal and professional destruction in ways that can break people permanently. So what happened? Parents chose a son over a daughter? Siblings fighting over inheritance? Business partners who turned out to be con artists? The understanding in her voice broke down every wall I'd built up over the past week. I told her everything. The birthday meeting, Timothy's systematic sabotage, my parents' cold dismissal, the financial devastation, the destroyed reputation. Elena listened without judgment, occasionally nodding as if she'd heard variations of this story many times before. Here's what's going to happen, Elena said when I finished. You're going to come work for me as a business development consultant. The pay is enough to get you an apartment and some decent clothes. The work will be challenging enough to keep your skills sharp while you figure out your next move. And if you're half as capable as you sound, I might have an opportunity that could change everything. Why would you help me? I asked, overwhelmed by this sudden change in fortune. You don't even know me. Because someone helped me when I was in your shoes, Elena replied. And because I've learned to recognize potential when I see it. Your family may have thrown you away, but that doesn't mean you're worthless. Sometimes the best revenge is building something so successful that the people who dismissed you have no choice but to respect what you've accomplished. She handed me her business card and wrote an address on the back. This is my home address. You can stay in the guest room until you find your own place. I have 2 rules, no self-pity parties, and you work harder than you've ever worked in your life. The road to proving them wrong starts with proving yourself right. As I sat there holding Elena's business card, feeling hope for the first time in a week, I realized that my lowest moment had just become the turning point. The Harrison family had tried to erase me, but they'd miscalculated one crucial factor: they'd taught me too well. Everything I knew about business, about negotiation, about building value from nothing, I'd learned from them. Now I was going to use those lessons to build something they could never take away from me. There's one more thing you should know, Elena added as we prepared to leave. The technology sector moves fast, and it rewards innovation over tradition. Real estate is about to go through a digital transformation that will make the old way of doing business completely obsolete. If you're smart about it, you could be positioned to benefit when that transition happens. Looking back now, I realize that conversation was the moment my real education began. Not just about business or technology, but about the difference between being given power and earning it. The Harrison family had given me a position based on my last name and their expectations. Elena was offering me the chance to build something based on my own merit and vision. The choice between those 2 paths would define everything that came after. Working for Elena Rodriguez was like attending a master class in entrepreneurship 7 days a week. Her company, PropTech Innovations, operated from a converted warehouse in Hartford that buzzed with the energy of 20-something programmers and seasoned business strategists collaborating on projects that seemed to blur the line between business software and science fiction. My official title was Business Development Consultant, but my actual role was Elena's apprentice in everything from artificial intelligence applications to venture capital negotiations. The first month was a baptism by fire that made my previous 15-hour workdays at Harrison Properties look like part-time work. Elena expected me to understand complex software architectures, learn programming languages I'd never heard of, and analyze market trends in industries I'd never considered. Most nights I fell asleep at my desk, surrounded by programming textbooks and market research reports, slowly building the foundation of knowledge I'd need for what was coming next. The real estate industry is dying, Elena told me during one of our late-night strategy sessions. Not the demand for real estate, obviously, but the entire infrastructure of how properties are bought, sold, and managed. The average real estate transaction today involves the same basic processes that were used 50 years ago. Paper contracts, in-person visits, limited market data, inefficient communication between all the parties involved. It's ripe for disruption. I began to see what she meant as I dove deeper into the research. Emerging technologies like virtual reality, artificial intelligence, and blockchain were already transforming other industries, but real estate had barely begun to adopt even basic digital tools. The Harrison family business, like most traditional real estate companies, was essentially operating with 19th-century business models in a digital age. My breakthrough idea came during my third month at Apex, while I was analyzing data from the luxury real estate market I knew so well. The problem wasn't just that real estate transactions were inefficient, it was that buyers and sellers were making decisions based on incomplete information. Property visits were time-consuming and often disappointing. Market analysis was based on historical data that was weeks or months old. Investment decisions were made using gut instinct rather than predictive analytics. What if, I proposed to Elena during one of our weekly brainstorming sessions, we could create a platform that combines virtual reality property tours with artificial intelligence-powered investment analysis? Buyers could experience properties remotely with complete accuracy, and the AI could provide real-time market predictions based on thousands of data points that human analysts can't process fast enough. Elena's eyes lit up with the same enthusiasm I'd seen when she described her most successful ventures. That's not just a business idea, Isabelle. That's a paradigm shift. You're talking about making the entire real estate industry operate like a technology company. How confident are you that this could work? Confident enough to bet everything on it, I replied, and I meant every word. This wasn't just about building a successful business anymore. This was about proving that the Harrison family had made the biggest mistake of their lives when they chose Timothy over me. Building the initial prototype required skills I didn't possess, which meant 18-hour days learning to code, studying virtual reality development, and understanding machine learning algorithms that would power the predictive analytics. Elena provided access to Apex's development team, but she made it clear that I needed to understand every aspect of the technology if I was going to successfully pitch it to investors. The personal cost was enormous. I hadn't been on a date since before my birthday disaster, hadn't had a real conversation with anyone outside of work in months, and had developed a coffee habit that probably qualified as a medical condition. But every late night spent debugging code or analyzing market data felt like another step toward vindication. The first major obstacle came when Timothy discovered what I was working on. 4 months into development, I received a visit from Harrison Properties' legal department that felt like a declaration of war. The lawyer, a stern man in his 60s named Martin Blackwood, arrived at Apex's offices with a briefcase full of documents and an ultimatum that made my blood run cold. Ms. Harrison, he began formally, my clients are prepared to offer you a generous settlement in exchange for your signature on a comprehensive non-compete agreement. This agreement would prevent you from working in the real estate industry for a period of 5 years and would include non-disclosure provisions regarding any proprietary information you may have acquired during your employment with Harrison Properties. I never signed a non-compete when I worked for the family business, I replied, though I could feel my heart racing as I considered the implications of what he was proposing. Your new venture appears to be targeting the exact market segment that Harrison Properties serves, Blackwood continued. Our clients are prepared to argue that you're using confidential business strategies and client relationships that rightfully belong to the company. Rather than pursue lengthy and expensive litigation, they're offering you $50,000 to walk away from this project and pursue opportunities in other industries. $50,000 would have solved my immediate financial problems and provided security while I figured out a different career path. It would have been the practical choice, the safe choice. Instead, I looked Blackwood directly in the eye and said, "Tell my former family that I'll see them in court before I sign anything that prevents me from competing with them." The legal battle that followed was swift and brutal. Timothy had clearly anticipated this moment and had prepared for it by documenting every client interaction I'd had during my final years at Harrison Properties. They claimed I was using confidential client lists, proprietary market analysis, and trade secrets that belonged to the company. The fact that I developed these relationships and insights through my own work was irrelevant in their version of events. Elena hired the best intellectual property attorney in Connecticut, a woman named Patricia Strong who specialized in defending entrepreneurs against corporate intimidation tactics. The discovery phase of the lawsuit revealed the extent of Timothy's preparation for this fight. He'd been building a case against me for over a year, documenting every email I'd sent, every client meeting I'd attended, and every strategy document I'd created. "They're trying to claim ownership of your education and experience," Patricia explained during one of our strategy meetings. "This is a common tactic when established companies want to prevent former employees from becoming competitors. They'll spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on legal fees to prevent you from spending thousands of dollars on development costs." The case dragged on for 6 months, during which Timothy managed to contact several potential investors for my venture and warn them about the ongoing litigation. The message was clear: investing in my company would mean getting dragged into a legal war with an established business that had significant resources and a willingness to fight dirty. The breakthrough came when Patricia discovered evidence that Timothy had been systematically documenting confidential company information that he'd shared with friends and business associates. His own communications revealed that he'd been far more careless with actual proprietary information than I had ever been. The judge ruled in my favor, stating that general industry knowledge and professional experience couldn't be claimed as trade secrets by any employer. The court finds that Ms. Harrison's venture is based on publicly available market research and innovative applications of existing technology, the judge declared. Harrison Properties' claims of trade secret theft are without merit and appear to be an attempt to stifle legitimate competition through abuse of the legal system. The victory was sweet, but the real celebration came 3 days later when Elena made an announcement that changed everything. "I've decided to invest $2 million in your venture as Apex Innovations' first external startup investment," she told me. "But this isn't charity, and it's not because I feel sorry for you. This is because I believe this technology could generate returns that make my Microsoft acquisition look like pocket change." As I stood in Elena's office, holding the investment agreement that would fund the next phase of development, I realized that the Harrison family's attempts to destroy me had actually created the motivation I needed to build something truly revolutionary. They'd given me the gift of having nothing left to lose, which turned out to be the most liberating feeling I'd ever experienced. The technology was just the beginning. The real challenge would be building a company that could compete with established real estate firms while revolutionizing an entire industry. But for the first time since that devastating birthday meeting, I felt ready for whatever came next. PropTech Innovations launched 6 months later with the kind of media attention that established companies spend millions trying to achieve. The virtual reality real estate platform exceeded every performance metric we'd projected, and our artificial intelligence investment analysis was providing accuracy rates that made traditional market research look like guesswork. Within 8 weeks of our official launch, we'd signed contracts with 3 major luxury hotels chains worth over $2 million in total revenue. The success was intoxicating, but it also painted a target on our backs that I should have seen coming. The Harrison family had spent generations building relationships throughout the real estate industry, and they weren't going to watch their disowned daughter destroy their market share without fighting back. The first sign of trouble came from an unexpected source, Jessica Chen, my former classmate from Harvard Business School. Jessica had reached out to me during the early development phase, expressing admiration for what I was building and offering to help however she could. She'd attended several of our investor presentations and had provided valuable feedback on our business model. When she suggested introducing me to her venture capital contacts, I was grateful for what seemed like genuine support from someone who understood the challenges of building a tech startup. "I'm so proud of what you've accomplished, Isabelle," Jessica told me during what I thought was a celebration dinner after our successful hotel chain contracts. "You've taken something terrible and turned it into an opportunity. That takes incredible strength." I should have been more suspicious of her sudden interest in my work, especially given how little we'd spoken during business school. But after months of isolation and betrayal, having someone from my past express genuine support felt like a lifeline to the person I used to be. The betrayal revealed itself 2 weeks later when I arrived at the office to find Elena waiting for me with an expression I'd learned to recognize as barely controlled fury. "We have a problem," she said simply, gesturing for me to follow her into the conference room where she'd spread out printed emails and documents across the table. "Your friend Jessica has been feeding information to Timothy," Elena continued. "Screenshots of our investor presentations, copies of our development timeline, detailed notes from our strategy meetings. Everything we've shared with her has been passed along to Harrison Properties within hours." The documents Elena showed me were devastating in their comprehensiveness. Jessica had been documenting every aspect of our business development, from our pricing strategies to our client acquisition targets. She'd even recorded portions of our conversations and provided transcripts to Timothy that revealed competitive advantages we'd planned to keep confidential. "How did you find out?" I asked, though I was already calculating the damage this information could cause. "Marcus Chen, Jessica's brother, came to me yesterday," Elena replied. Apparently, Jessica was bragging to her family about how she was helping Timothy compete with us. Marcus works in cybersecurity and recognized that what his sister was doing was corporate espionage. He brought me proof because he was disgusted by her behavior. The timing couldn't have been worse. Timothy had used Jessica's intelligence to launch Harrison Properties' own technology initiative, announcing it just 3 days after our successful hotel contracts with language that was almost identical to our marketing materials. They called it Real Estate Revolution and positioned it as the next evolution of their family legacy business. But Timothy's counterattack went far beyond copying our business model. Within a week of their announcement, 3 of our early clients received calls from Harrison Properties offering the same services at rates that were clearly below cost. Timothy was using the family's established cash reserves to subsidize a price war designed to kill our startup before it could gain momentum. "How can they offer virtual reality tours for 60% less than our rates?" our sales director asked during an emergency meeting. "They can't possibly be making money at those prices." "They're not trying to make money," I explained grimly. "They're trying to put us out of business. Once we're gone, they'll raise their prices back to normal levels." The situation deteriorated rapidly. 2 of our major clients canceled their contracts, citing concerns about our long-term viability in the face of competition from such an established company. Our largest investor started asking questions about our competitive strategy and whether we'd properly analyzed the risks of competing directly with a family business that clearly had personal motivations for destroying us. Then the technical sabotage began. Our virtual reality platform started experiencing mysterious failures during client demonstrations. Tours would freeze at crucial moments, images would load incorrectly, and our artificial intelligence algorithms would produce obviously flawed market predictions. The failures were intermittent and seemed random, making them nearly impossible to debug or prevent. "This isn't equipment failure," our lead developer told me after a week of increasingly frequent problems. "Someone is actively interfering with our servers. These are sophisticated attacks that require detailed knowledge of our system architecture." Elena hired a cybersecurity firm to investigate, and their findings confirmed our worst fears. The attacks were coming from multiple sources and showed a level of coordination that suggested professional hackers rather than random cybercriminals. Someone with significant resources was paying to have our technology disrupted at the most damaging possible moments. The lowest point came during a presentation to Meridian International, a luxury resort company that could have become our anchor client. I was demonstrating our virtual reality platform for their executive team when the entire system crashed, displaying error messages that made us look incompetent and unreliable. The meeting ended with polite thanks and promises to consider our proposal, but I knew we'd lost them. "I'm sorry, Isabelle," the Meridian CEO told me privately as the meeting concluded. "The technology is impressive, but we can't partner with a company that can't guarantee system reliability. Our guests expect perfection, and we can't risk their experience on a platform that might fail." That evening, I sat in my apartment staring at financial projections that painted an increasingly desperate picture. Our runway was shortening with each lost client, and our technical problems were making it impossible to sign new contracts. Elena had invested $2 million in my vision, and I was watching it disappear because my own family was willing to commit corporate sabotage to prevent my success. The breakthrough came when Marcus Chen arrived at our office the next morning with evidence that would change everything. Marcus had been quietly investigating the cyber attacks against us, using his connections in the cybersecurity industry to trace the digital fingerprints back to their source. "Timothy hired a company called Digital Defense Solutions to disrupt your platform," Marcus explained, showing me records of wire transfers from Harrison Properties to the hacking firm. But he was stupid about it. He used corporate accounts and left a paper trail that proves criminal intent. Marcus had risked his relationship with his family to help us, motivated by disgust at Jessica's betrayal and respect for what we were building. "My sister chose money over integrity," he said. "But that doesn't mean our whole family supports what she did. I want to help you rebuild your security infrastructure so this can't happen again." As I looked at the evidence Marcus had brought us, I realized that Timothy's desperation to destroy me had led him to make the same mistake that would eventually bring down every bully. He'd underestimated his target and overestimated his own cleverness. The Harrison family had raised me to be strategic and patient, but they'd forgotten that those same qualities would serve me well when fighting against them. Elena hired Marcus as our chief technology officer, bringing military-grade cybersecurity expertise that would make our platform virtually impenetrable. With Jessica's intelligence pipeline cut off and our systems protected against further attacks, we could finally focus on building the business we'd originally envisioned. "They made two critical mistakes," Elena observed as we planned our comeback strategy. "They showed their hand too early, and they broke laws in ways that leave them vulnerable to prosecution. Timothy may have thought he was playing chess, but he was actually setting up his own checkmate. The war was far from over, but the balance of power had just shifted dramatically in our favor. Now it was time to show the Harrison family what I'd learned during my months of exile and rebuilding." The partnership with Meridian International came through 6 months later, not despite our previous technical failures, but because of how we'd responded to them. Marcus's security improvements had transformed our platform into something that exceeded industry standards for reliability and data protection. When Meridian's CEO saw our new capabilities during a flawless demonstration, he didn't just sign a contract. He introduced us to the International Luxury Hotel Association, opening doors to markets we'd never dreamed of accessing so quickly. The virtual reality real estate tours were revolutionizing how high-end properties were marketed and sold. Hotels could now offer potential guests immersive previews of their suites and amenities. Commercial real estate developers could showcase office buildings to international investors without anyone leaving their home countries. Residential real estate agents were closing deals with overseas buyers who had never physically visited the properties they purchased. Our artificial intelligence market analysis was generating results that stunned even the most experienced real estate professionals. The system could predict property value changes with 87% accuracy up to 6 months in advance, identify emerging market trends weeks before human analysts recognized them, and optimize investment portfolios in ways that consistently outperformed traditional strategies. The success was impossible to ignore, and the media attention that followed was everything I'd dreamed of during those dark months of building the company. Forbes featured me on their cover with the headline, "The Disowned Daughter Who Revolutionized Real Estate." The article detailed not just our technological innovations, but the family betrayal that had motivated me to create something entirely new. Isabelle Harrison's story reads like a modern parable about the dangers of underestimating family members based on outdated assumptions about gender and leadership, the Forbes writer observed. By choosing tradition over innovation, Harrison Properties may have inadvertently created their most formidable competitor. The article's publication triggered a panic at Harrison Properties that I could see reflected in their stock price. Traditional real estate companies across the industry were scrambling to develop their own technology platforms, but they were years behind our development timeline and lacked the artificial intelligence capabilities that set our system apart. Timothy's response was predictably desperate and ultimately self-destructive. Instead of acknowledging that technology was the future of real estate and attempting to negotiate some kind of partnership, he doubled down on legal warfare. Harrison Properties filed a lawsuit alleging that I had stolen trade secrets and was using proprietary client information to compete unfairly with the family business. The lawsuit was Timothy's biggest mistake yet, because it opened Harrison Properties' business practices to legal discovery and public scrutiny. Our attorney, Patricia Strong, used the discovery process to uncover years of questionable business decisions, financial irregularities, and documented evidence of the systematic campaign to destroy my career and reputation. But Timothy had prepared one final, desperate gambit that nearly succeeded in destroying everything I'd built. 3 weeks after the Forbes article was published, FBI agents arrived at my apartment with an arrest warrant charging me with corporate espionage and wire fraud. Timothy had somehow convinced federal prosecutors that I was using my platform to illegally access confidential financial information about competing real estate companies. The arrest was deliberately timed for maximum humiliation. FBI agents escorted me out of PropTech Innovations headquarters in handcuffs while news cameras captured every moment. The charges were splashed across business news websites within hours, accompanied by statements from Harrison Properties expressing disappointment that family conflicts had led to alleged criminal behavior. Federal prosecutors believe that Ms. Harrison used her family connections and insider knowledge to gain unauthorized access to confidential business information, Timothy told reporters outside the courthouse. This is exactly the kind of unethical behavior that led to her removal from Harrison Properties in the first place. Sitting in a federal holding cell that evening, I understood that Timothy had orchestrated the perfect trap. Even if the charges were eventually dropped, the damage to PropTech Innovations would be catastrophic. No investor would fund a company whose CEO was under federal investigation. No client would trust their confidential information to a platform associated with alleged corporate espionage. Elena posted my bail and immediately hired the best criminal defense attorney in the state, but the legal proceedings would take months to resolve. During that time, our business would be effectively frozen, our employees would find other jobs, and our technology would become obsolete as competitors caught up with our innovations. The breakthrough came from Marcus Chen's relentless investigation into Timothy's digital activities. While federal prosecutors were building their case against me, Marcus was building an even stronger case against the real criminal. Using advanced forensic analysis of Timothy's computer networks, Marcus discovered evidence that Timothy had been embezzling money from Harrison Properties for over 3 years. Timothy created false vendor accounts and fake consulting contracts to funnel money into offshore accounts, Marcus explained to our legal team. But more importantly, he planted fake evidence in your PropTech systems to support the federal charges against you. I can prove that everything the FBI found was placed there remotely after your arrest. The evidence Marcus uncovered was devastating in its scope and clarity. Timothy had stolen over $12 million from the family business using sophisticated financial fraud schemes. He'd used some of that money to bribe witnesses and plant fabricated evidence that supported the criminal charges against me. Most damning of all, Marcus had recovered communications showing that Timothy had coordinated with Jessica to manufacture the corporate espionage allegations. Patricia Strong presented this evidence to federal prosecutors 3 days before my trial was scheduled to begin. Within hours, all charges against me were dropped, and new arrest warrants were issued for Timothy and Jessica on charges of fraud, embezzlement, witness tampering, and conspiracy to obstruct justice. The public vindication was swift and complete. Every major business news outlet covered the story of how the real criminal had tried to frame his innocent sister. The FBI's public apology for their premature arrest became a secondary news story that only emphasized how thoroughly I'd been cleared of any wrongdoing. But the best moment came when I watched Timothy being arrested outside Harrison Properties headquarters, the same building where I'd been humiliated and dismissed exactly 18 months earlier. The man who had spent years systematically destroying my reputation was now facing federal charges that would likely result in a prison sentence of 10 to 15 years. Harrison Properties' stock price collapsed as news of Timothy's embezzlement spread through the financial community. The company that had chosen him over me was now facing bankruptcy because of his criminal behavior. Elena and I watched the stock market coverage from our office, and I felt something that went beyond satisfaction or vindication. "How does it feel to be right about everything?" Elena asked as Timothy's arrest played on the news for the third time that day. "It feels like justice," I replied, "but it also feels like the real work is just beginning." The criminal charges against Timothy had cleared the way for PropTech Innovations to operate without legal interference, but our 18 months of legal battles had cost us valuable time in a rapidly evolving technology market. Now we needed to prove that our platform could deliver the revolutionary results we'd been promising, and we needed to do it quickly enough to establish market dominance before our competitors closed the gap. With the legal clouds finally lifted, PropTech Innovations entered a period of explosive growth that exceeded even Elena's most optimistic projections. The combination of validated technology, cleared legal standing, and sympathetic media coverage created a perfect storm of investor interest and client demand. Within 6 months of Timothy's arrest, we'd expanded from a team of 15 people to over 200 employees across 4 office locations. The acquisition offers started arriving almost immediately. Microsoft, Google, Amazon, and Oracle all expressed interest in purchasing our platform for valuations ranging from $600 million to $1.2 billion. The technology giants recognized that our artificial intelligence algorithms and virtual reality integration represented the future of not just real estate, but multiple industries that relied on spatial data and predictive analytics. "You could walk away right now with more money than you could spend in 3 lifetimes, Elena pointed out during one of our strategy sessions. Microsoft's offer of $800 million would make you one of the youngest self-made female billionaires in the country. The temptation was enormous, particularly when I considered how completely it would vindicate every decision I'd made since that devastating birthday meeting. Timothy was facing a federal trial that would likely result in a decade in prison. Harrison Properties was struggling to survive bankruptcy proceedings. My parents had lost everything they'd spent generations building. Taking $800 million from Microsoft would be the perfect ending to a revenge story that had consumed nearly 2 years of my life. Instead, I made the decision that would define the next phase of my career and establish PropTech Innovations as a permanent force in the technology industry. "We're going public," I announced to Elena and our board of directors. "This technology is too valuable to sell to a company that will just integrate it into their existing platform. We're going to build an independent empire that will outlast all of us." The decision to pursue an initial public offering was ambitious to the point of recklessness. IPOs typically required years of preparation and demonstrated profitability that we hadn't yet achieved. Our revenue was growing rapidly, but our expenses were growing even faster as we expanded our technology platform and hired top talent from competing companies. Most venture capitalists advised against going public so quickly after such dramatic legal upheaval. Elena supported the decision completely, recognizing that my motivations went beyond financial gain. "You're not just trying to get rich," she observed. "You're trying to build something that will force the entire real estate industry to acknowledge that they were wrong about your capabilities." The preparation for our IPO was the most intense period of my professional life. Investment banks required detailed financial projections, comprehensive market analysis, and technology demonstrations that proved our platform could scale to handle millions of users simultaneously. Every aspect of our business model was scrutinized by regulatory agencies, institutional investors, and technology analysts who specialized in identifying weaknesses that could derail public offerings. Meanwhile, the Harrison family's attempts to interfere with our success were entering their final, most desperate phase. With Timothy in federal custody awaiting trial, my parents hired a team of lawyers to challenge our IPO filing, claiming that our technology violated patents they'd recently filed for similar virtual reality applications. The patents were obviously fraudulent, filed months after our platform was already operational, but they created enough legal uncertainty to concern some potential investors. Harrison Properties also launched a public relations campaign designed to associate our company with the family scandal and federal investigation. They hired a crisis management firm to spread rumors about our business practices and financial stability, hoping to create enough negative publicity to torpedo our IPO before it reached the market. They're trying to make investors believe that your success is somehow connected to Timothy's criminal behavior, our public relations advisor explained during one of our crisis management meetings. The narrative they're pushing is that the entire Harrison family is corrupt, including you. Our response was to embrace complete transparency about every aspect of our business development and legal vindication. Rather than hiding from the family scandal, we used it as evidence of our ethical standards and commitment to legitimate business practices. Our IPO prospectus included detailed explanations of the legal challenges we'd overcome and the federal investigation that had cleared us of any wrongdoing. The strategy worked better than we could have anticipated. Instead of viewing the family conflict as a liability, investors began to see it as proof of our competitive advantages and market potential. If our technology was threatening enough to drive an established company to criminal behavior, it must represent genuinely revolutionary capabilities that could dominate the market. The roadshow to promote our IPO took us to investment firms across the country, where I presented our technology platform to some of the most sophisticated financial minds in the world. The demonstrations were flawless, thanks to Marcus's security infrastructure and months of preparation by our development team. Institutional investors were particularly impressed by our artificial intelligence capabilities, recognizing that predictive analytics had applications far beyond real estate. This platform could revolutionize commercial construction, urban planning, and infrastructure development, one investment manager observed after our presentation. You're not just disrupting real estate transactions, you're creating tools that could transform how cities are designed and managed. The IPO launched on a Tuesday morning in October with an opening price of $38 per share. By the end of the first day of trading, our stock price had reached $62, giving PropTech Innovations a market valuation of $1.4 billion. I owned 18% of the company, making my personal net worth approximately $250 million. But the real vindication came 3 days later when Harrison Properties filed for bankruptcy, unable to service their debt obligations in the face of collapsing revenue and ongoing legal costs. The company that had dismissed me as too emotional and unstable to handle business pressure had been destroyed by the very son they'd chosen to lead them. The bankruptcy filing revealed the full scope of Timothy's embezzlement and the damage it had caused to the family business. Over 5 years, he'd stolen nearly $20 million while simultaneously making strategic decisions that prioritized short-term profits over long-term sustainability. The Harrison Properties that had dominated luxury real estate for 3 generations was being liquidated to pay creditors and legal judgments. Standing in my corner office overlooking Hartford's skyline, watching news coverage of Harrison Properties' final liquidation auction, I felt something more complex than simple satisfaction. The family that had raised me was gone, destroyed by their own choices and the corruption they'd enabled. Timothy would spend the next 12 years in federal prison. My parents had lost their home, their business, and their standing in the community they'd led for decades. Elena found me watching the coverage and stood beside me in silence for several minutes. "Any regrets?" she asked finally. "None," I replied, and I meant it completely. They had every opportunity to make different choices. They chose destruction over growth, tradition over innovation, and cruelty over family. These are the consequences of those decisions. Our stock price stabilized at around $58 per share over the following months, giving us a market capitalization that fluctuated between $1.1 and $1.3 billion. PropTech Innovations had become exactly what I'd promised it would be, a technology platform that revolutionized how real estate transactions were conducted and analyzed. More importantly, we'd proven that innovation and ethical leadership could triumph over corruption and established power. The technology we'd built was being adopted by real estate companies around the world, and our artificial intelligence algorithms were being licensed to industries from urban planning to agricultural development. I was 30 years old, worth over $200 million, and leading a company that was reshaping a major industry. But the most satisfying part wasn't the money or the recognition. It was knowing that I'd built something permanent, something that would outlast the family drama and personal conflicts that had motivated its creation. The reunion I'd never expected happened on a rainy Thursday morning exactly 2 years and 3 months after that devastating birthday meeting. My assistant informed me that Richard and Margaret Harrison were in the lobby of PropTech Innovations, requesting a meeting with me. They hadn't called ahead or scheduled an appointment through proper channels. They'd simply appeared at my company headquarters, carrying themselves with the same presumptuous authority they'd displayed when dismissing me from their lives. I considered refusing to see them. Everything I'd built had been motivated by proving them wrong, and I'd succeeded beyond even my own ambitious projections. PropTech Innovations was now valued at over $1.3 billion. I personally owned stock worth approximately $240 million, and the company was expanding into international markets that would likely double our valuation within 2 years. I had achieved financial success that far exceeded anything the Harrison family business had ever accomplished, and I'd done it by embracing the same innovation and emotional intelligence they'd claimed made me unfit for leadership. But curiosity won over caution. I wanted to see what desperation looked like on the faces of people who had wielded absolute power over my life for 28 years. Elena advised against the meeting, concerned that my parents might be planning some kind of legal or emotional manipulation, but I felt confident enough in my position to handle whatever they brought to the conversation. They looked older than I'd expected, older than the 2 years since our last conversation should have accounted for. Richard's hair had gone completely gray, and Margaret's carefully maintained appearance showed signs of financial stress that would have been unthinkable during their days of running Harrison Properties. They wore quality clothes that had seen too much wear, drove a used car instead of the luxury vehicles they'd preferred, and carried themselves with a humility that was entirely foreign to my memories of them. "Isabelle," Richard began, his voice carrying none of the commanding authority I remembered from business meetings. "Thank you for agreeing to see us. We know we don't deserve your time or consideration." "You're right," I replied coldly. "You don't deserve either. But I'm curious about what could possibly motivate you to come here after everything that's happened." Margaret spoke next, and I was shocked to hear her voice break with emotion. "We came to apologize. Not because we want anything from you, but because you deserve to hear us acknowledge how wrong we were about everything. About you, about Timothy, about what real leadership looks like." The apology felt surreal coming from a woman who had spent my entire childhood emphasizing the importance of appearances and proper behavior over genuine emotion or vulnerability. Margaret had never apologized for anything during my youth, operating from the assumption that Harrison family members didn't make mistakes significant enough to require acknowledgement. "We were blind to Timothy's problems because we wanted to believe that having a son take over the business was the natural order of things," Richard continued. "We ignored evidence of his incompetence and criminal behavior because admitting we were wrong about him would have meant admitting we were wrong about you." They explained that Timothy's deception had been comprehensive and systematic, spanning years of carefully crafted lies about his business acumen and my supposed emotional instability. He'd shown them fabricated performance reviews, staged conversations with fake clients who expressed concerns about female leadership, and even hired actors to pose as business associates who questioned my competence. "He convinced us that promoting you would damage the company's reputation with traditional clients who expected male leadership," Margaret said. "We were so concerned about maintaining respectability that we didn't recognize how Timothy was manipulating our fears and prejudices." The revelation that my parents had been manipulated rather than simply choosing cruelty offered a different perspective on the family conflict, But it didn't excuse the fundamental assumptions that had made Timothy's deception possible. Their willingness to believe that I was emotionally unstable and professionally incompetent reflected beliefs about gender and leadership that ran deeper than any individual's manipulation. "Why are you telling me this now?" I asked, genuinely curious about what they hoped to accomplish with this confession. "Because watching you build this company has taught us more about real leadership than 40 years of running our own business," Richard replied. "Everything you've accomplished proves that we didn't just make the wrong choice about succession, we didn't understand what leadership actually requires." Margaret reached into her purse and pulled out a newspaper clipping from the previous week's business section. It was an article about PropTech Innovations' expansion into European markets, featuring a photo of me speaking at a technology conference in London. "We followed every story about your success," she said. "You've accomplished things we never could have imagined, and you've done it by embracing exactly the qualities we taught you to suppress." The conversation continued for over 2 hours, during which my parents revealed the complete scope of the damage Timothy's choices had caused to their lives and the family business. Beyond the obvious financial devastation, they'd lost their standing in social and business communities where the Harrison name had been respected for generations. Friends and business associates had distanced themselves from the family scandal, and both of my parents had been forced to find employment in positions far below their previous status. "We're working as consultants for a small real estate firm in Hartford," Richard explained. "The work is honest, but it's humbling to realize how little we actually knew about adapting to change and building sustainable business practices." Margaret added that the experience had forced them to confront assumptions about business, family, and gender roles that they'd never previously questioned. "Watching you succeed has made us realize that strength and intelligence don't look the way we thought they did. You were always the stronger leader, but we couldn't see it because it didn't match our expectations." The most surprising part of the conversation was their acknowledgement that they didn't expect or deserve forgiveness. They weren't asking to be welcomed back into my life or to benefit from my success. They simply wanted me to know that they recognized the magnitude of their mistakes and the injustice of how they'd treated me. "We don't expect you to consider us family again," Richard said as the meeting neared its conclusion. "We understand that our choices destroyed that relationship permanently. But we wanted you to know that we're proud of what you've accomplished, even though we don't deserve any credit for your success." As they prepared to leave, I made a decision that surprised even me. "There's a position opening in our real estate analysis division," I said. "It's entry-level work that would involve learning our artificial intelligence systems and supporting our market research team. The pay is adequate but not generous, and there would be no special treatment because of our family connection. If you're interested in learning about the future of real estate instead of just complaining about how the industry has changed, you can apply through normal channels." The offer wasn't motivated by forgiveness or sentiment. I genuinely believed that my parents could contribute valuable knowledge about traditional real estate practices while learning about the technology that was transforming the industry. More importantly, I wanted them to experience what it felt like to work for a company that valued competence over connections and innovation over tradition. Margaret started crying, which was the first time I'd seen her show genuine emotion since I was a small child. "You would give us another chance after everything we put you through?" "I'm giving you the opportunity to earn a chance," I clarified. "Whether you succeed or fail will depend entirely on your willingness to learn and contribute. There are no guarantees and no special privileges." 6 months later, both of my parents were working as junior analysts in PropTech Innovations' market research division. They'd proven surprisingly adaptable to new technology and business processes, and their decades of experience in traditional real estate provided valuable perspective for our development team. The relationship between us remained professional rather than personal, but it was built on mutual respect rather than obligation or manipulation. Timothy was sentenced to 14 years in federal prison for embezzlement, fraud, and conspiracy charges. I felt no satisfaction from his imprisonment, but I also felt no sympathy. He'd made deliberate choices to destroy others for his personal benefit, and he was experiencing the consequences of those decisions. Elena observed that my decision to hire my parents demonstrated emotional intelligence rather than the emotional instability the Harrison family had once claimed disqualified me from leadership. The strongest leaders are the ones who can separate business decisions from personal feelings, she said. You found a way to benefit from their knowledge while maintaining appropriate boundaries about the relationship. Standing in my office that evening, looking out at the city where I'd once been homeless and desperate, I realized that the story had reached its natural conclusion. The family that had rejected me had been replaced by people who valued my contributions. The business that had dismissed my potential had been surpassed by a company built on my vision. The future that had seemed impossible during those dark months of sleeping in my car had become reality through determination, innovation, and the support of people who believed in merit over tradition. Today, exactly 3 years after standing in the rain outside my childhood home with nothing but a cardboard box and broken dreams, I'm standing in the same spot for entirely different reasons. The mansion that once represented everything I'd lost is now the headquarters of the Harrison Foundation for Women Entrepreneurs, a nonprofit organization that provides funding, mentorship, and resources for women starting their own businesses. The irony isn't lost on me that the building where I was told women couldn't handle business leadership is now dedicated to proving exactly the opposite. The transformation of my family's former home into a foundation wasn't motivated by nostalgia or sentimentality. It was a strategic business decision that aligned with PropTech Innovations' corporate social responsibility goals while addressing a genuine market need. Women entrepreneurs receive less than 3% of venture capital funding despite generating higher returns on investment than male-led startups. The Harrison Foundation bridges that gap by providing early-stage funding and comprehensive business development support. Over the past year, we've launched 573 women-led businesses through the Foundation's programs. These companies span industries from biotechnology to sustainable agriculture, representing the kind of innovative thinking that traditional investment firms often overlook. The Foundation's success rate is remarkable. 87% of our funded startups are still operating profitably after 18 months, compared to the industry average of 62%. Elena serves as the Foundation's chief strategic advisor, bringing her expertise in technology development and startup scaling to help our entrepreneurs avoid common pitfalls. What we're building here isn't charity, she frequently tells Foundation participants. We're identifying and supporting the business leaders who will define the next generation of successful companies. Marcus Chen, who has become both my business partner and life partner, manages the Foundation's technology infrastructure while continuing his role as PropTech Innovations' Chief Technology Officer. Our relationship developed gradually from professional collaboration to personal trust to deep affection based on shared values and mutual respect. Marcus understood the complexity of my family situation without trying to fix it, supported my business ambitions without competing with them, and proved his integrity through actions rather than words. We were married 6 months ago in a small ceremony at the Foundation headquarters, surrounded by the entrepreneurs we'd helped launch and the friends who had supported us through the most challenging period of my life. Elena walked me down the aisle, fulfilling the role my father should have played but had forfeited through his own choices. The wedding was featured in 3 business magazines, not because of celebrity status, but because it represented a partnership between 2 successful entrepreneurs who had built their relationship on professional respect and shared vision. My parents continue to work in PropTech Innovations' research division, where they've proven surprisingly valuable in analyzing traditional real estate market trends and identifying opportunities for technological integration. Our relationship remains cordial and professional, built on mutual respect rather than familial obligation. They've learned to appreciate innovation and adapt to change, while I've learned to separate their personal failings from their professional contributions. The healing process hasn't been linear or simple. Family therapy sessions helped us understand the dynamics that led to such destructive choices, but they also reinforced that some relationships can't be restored to their original form. Margaret has become an outspoken advocate for women in business, speaking regularly about the dangers of unconscious bias and traditional assumptions about leadership. Richard has embraced technology as a tool for expanding rather than threatening traditional real estate practices. The hardest lesson for me, Margaret told a women's business conference last month, was learning that strength looks different in different people. I spent years trying to force my daughter into a mold that diminished her natural capabilities instead of recognizing that her leadership style was actually more effective than what I expected leadership to look like. PropTech Innovations has expanded far beyond real estate into urban planning, infrastructure development, and sustainable construction technologies. Our artificial intelligence platform is being used by city governments to optimize traffic flow, plan public transportation systems, and predict housing needs decades in advance. The company employs over 800 people across 12 office locations, and our market capitalization fluctuates between $2.1 and $2.4 billion. I'm 31 years old, worth approximately $420 million, and leading a company that has fundamentally changed how multiple industries utilize spatial data and predictive analytics. But the most meaningful success isn't financial or professional. It's the knowledge that I've built something sustainable and beneficial that will outlast any individual recognition or personal vindication. The foundation has become my primary passion outside of PropTech's continued growth. Every month, I meet with new entrepreneurs who remind me of my own desperate determination during those early days of building something from nothing. Their diversity of backgrounds, industries, and approaches to business challenges continues to expand my understanding of what entrepreneurship can accomplish when given adequate support and resources. Timothy was released from federal prison last month after serving 3 years of his 14-year sentence. He's attempting to rebuild his life in another state, far from the business community where his crimes destroyed his reputation. I occasionally receive updates about his situation through mutual acquaintances, but I feel neither satisfaction nor concern about his struggles. He's no longer part of my story except as a cautionary example of how privilege and entitlement can lead to self-destruction. Looking back on the journey from family rejection to business success, the most important lesson hasn't been about revenge or vindication. It's been about the difference between being given power and earning it. The Harrison family gave me a position based on expectations and assumptions, but they could take it away just as easily. Everything I've built since then has been earned through competence, innovation, and the support of people who value merit over tradition. The story of being disowned on my birthday and responding by building a billion-dollar company isn't really about business success or family conflict. It's about discovering that the worst thing that can happen to you might actually be the catalyst for the best thing you'll ever accomplish. The family that rejected me as unfit for leadership inadvertently freed me to develop leadership skills they never could have imagined. Elena recently observed that my business philosophy has evolved from proving others wrong to building something genuinely valuable. Revenge is a limited motivation, she said during one of our strategic planning sessions. But creating positive change in the world is sustainable motivation that grows stronger over time. The foundation's work continues to expand, the company's technology continues to evolve, and my personal life continues to develop in ways that bring satisfaction rather than vindication. The best chapters of this story aren't about overcoming family betrayal. They're about what becomes possible when you stop seeking approval from people who can't recognize your value and start building relationships with people who can. Standing here in what was once my family's mansion, surrounded by entrepreneurs who represent the future of business innovation, I realize that being disowned was the greatest gift the Harrison family ever gave me. They forced me to discover capabilities I never would have developed if they'd simply handed me the family business as expected. Their rejection became the foundation for achievements that far exceeded anything I could have accomplished within the limitations they would have imposed. As I watch today's foundation participants present their business plans to potential investors, I see the same determination and innovative thinking that transformed my own devastation into opportunity. Their success will be their own achievement, just as mine has been, but knowing that I've provided the platform for their growth feels more rewarding than any personal recognition or financial milestone. The rain that started falling on my birthday 3 years ago eventually stopped, as rain always does. What I built in the sunshine that followed proved that sometimes you have to lose everything you thought you wanted to discover what you're actually capable of creating. The Harrison family thought they were ending my story when they disowned me. Instead, they were just clearing the way for me to write a much better one. So here's my question for all of you who followed this incredible journey. What would you do if the people who were supposed to support your dreams became the biggest obstacle to achieving them? Have you ever had to choose between family loyalty and personal integrity? And when life forces you to start over from nothing, how do you find the courage to dream even bigger than before? If this story of transformation and triumph resonated with you, I'd love to see your thoughts in the comments below. Hit that like button if you believe that our biggest setbacks can become our greatest opportunities, and make sure to subscribe for more stories about turning life's challenges into lasting success. Share this video with anyone who needs to remember that being underestimated isn't a limitation, it's a competitive advantage that can change everything. Thank you for being part of this journey with me. Your support means the world, and I hope my story encourages you to never give up on building the life you truly deserve, no matter what obstacles others place in your path. Remember, the best revenge isn't getting even, it's living so well that success becomes its own vindication. Until next time, keep building something amazing.